When you were like, at what age do you? Well, I know you know, because I feel like you were like raised. You were open from the beginning, meaning, right?
I was invited in from some pretty open people, and so I was given a pretty like strong foundation of a connection. You know, not a lot of abuse, I guess, not a lot of trauma.
Right.
That was my parents were really, my mother specifically was had an awakening when she was 18, where the room filled with light, when she was at a point where she wanted to take her own life. And that was a really powerful signal to her that that she needed to be here.
Yeah, where to go.
And that she was going to be a mother, and that she was going to call in and that was going to be one of her major roles in this life, and to bring in some star beings.
And who was, like, you know, people followed certain people, certain gurus, or what was her practice?
Well, one of the things that was her first kind of like books that really influenced her and opened her up was the Autobiography of a Yogi by Paramahansa Yogananda. And she said that this book just kind of blasted her consciousness open into something where she felt she understood because of that experience that she had. And it helped her connect with a larger network of people too. I don't think she went and traveled to be with them. She was kind of a solo writer in many ways. My father, the two of them are still together.
Really?
And he's kind of been with it since the beginning, is my sense.
And he's a conservative guy a little bit?
In some ways, but he's more open than even my mother in other ways.
Really?
You know, they have an incredible balance with each other. They're very like yin yang. They bicker a lot in little things, but they love each other so deeply. You know, and there's some kind of vision that my father holds and trust that is this you know, in the universe. He actually did quite a bit of experimentation with psychedelics also in the 60s.
Oh, really?
Which my mother did not do. But when I later came to him, I was like, hey, Dad, so I finally tried LSD.
How old were you?
I was 27.
Okay.
I waited actually quite a while.
Jeez.
I did too.
I did it at 11.
Really? I mean, I think
Mushrooms when I was 11.
Mushrooms
Yeah.
when I was younger. Yeah.
But I was in Louisville, Kentucky, so it was like we were a little bit more outbacky.
Yeah.
So when I was in 8th, 9th grade, like doing acid was quite regular. I was in class on acid.
But you know, it's different. Like when you talk about doing acid, when I was younger, it just seemed like doing a drug or getting as blasted out as you could, not to do it for a spiritual bridge.
No, we were definitely like watching Led Zeppelin movies through the big screen, and how they had the colors at the bottom, the projector. You know what I'm talking about, the big one. And we were like looking at it orange and red
like
and
orange,
yellow. Yeah, we're like, wow, check it out in blue. Yeah. Definitely was not a conscious. You know, at least we weren't aware. You know, I'm pretty sure some of those things have led to who I am and what I go through. But at the time, we weren't seeking for anything except for escape.
Yeah.
And a trip.
And when you're like, the other thing I was looking at is when you were younger, I went through an awakening just very recent over the past couple of years, and it led me to what I'm doing right now. And it was difficult for me just because I didn't understand what was happening, and a lot of the people that were viewing what I was doing and the things I was saying, it looked like I was crazy. So a lot of times I'd see other people that said they were born open. I was like, it must have been the same thing, but just reversed, because to be so different as a kid and be separated because you see different things must be terrifying, like completely. Like that to me seems just as bad, you know, because kids are mean.
Yeah, no
you know,
doubt.
they're real mean. So, and especially if you're starting to see things like that, or, you know, that must have been a trip.
Well, it was helpful that I wasn't in actually school. I wasn't really put into a public school system ever, actually, as a kid. I was homeschooled, and then I was also in Waldorf schools. I was homeschooled 2nd and 3rd grade we had a few other family friends groups that were kind of raising their kids in the same way.
That's great.
And so we got to play together, and we were super, like, our lives were play, and we were supported in our play. We made these huge plays, actually, theaters, where we invited the whole neighborhood to, and I was the one, you know, I was one of the older ones, so I was directing and
Calling the shots.
Calling the shots.
That's awesome.
But we had so much fun, and I taught myself how to read during that time too, out of pure curiosity.
Wow.
I kept asking the grown-ups. I was like, "What does this say? What does this say?" And then just became a bookworm. But nobody told me I couldn't. And this was the thing. My parents were always very supportive in what I was really interested in.
Yeah.
And that didn't really tell me I couldn't do it. So I got to be around a lot of interesting, like, adults too. And then you just, and seeing auras and all of that was very normal to me. Like, I had a relationship with energies.
Energy, yeah.
That was normal until there was this man, and nobody talked to me about it. I just thought everybody saw that way, right? And then there was this friend of my mom's who owned a crystal shop in Miami, because we lived in South Florida at the time.
Right.
And he came, he kneeled down and put his hands on my shoulders, and he was like, and asked me he was very serious. He's like, do you see anything around your mother? My mother was like standing aside and like looking at some cards or something. And I was like, no grown-up had talked to me like that before, And so I told him what I saw, and he was like, and he looked at me very, very deeply, and he's like, don't ever forget that.
How old were you about this? How old?
I was probably about 5 or 6.
Yeah, that's
Wow.
amazing.
But
That's
it was
great.
something, though, that I did lose, actually. Like, when we moved back to Colorado when I was going into 4th grade, and I went into a school, Waldorf school, which was a really nurturing and beautiful environment.
Are they kind of like mystery schools in the kind of way?
If you know much about Rudolf Steiner and you do some research on Rudolf Steiner, which I would advise anyone who's interested in any of this stuff to go listen to some stuff on YouTube or read some of his books. This guy was a mystic, a fascinating character from the turn of the century. So the Waldorf school in many ways is now, I'm understanding it to be a mystery school for sure.
Oh, so it is, yeah. Okay.
I don't think it would
Looking
be
back at it,
publicized as that.
Got it. Now I understand what you're saying.
But the way that the children are received in reverence, educated in love, sent forth in freedom, I think like the whole goal of what the school is there to create a wholesome human being is what a mystery school is, at the root of what a mystery school from like the Gnostic,
that makes a lot of sense. It's I didn't get a lot of school myself, and I think because of that, I wasn't indoctrinated with all those things that you can't do. So I also feel that my street wisdom kind of came about because I didn't have those rules, those conditions
limitations.
on me.
Yeah, of
so
course.
I think that schools I'm saying like there's great things when they teach you, but it's the people and what the kids are doing that kind of closes you off. You feel judged, and it doesn't let you really get into who you really are because you're so worried about being judged as a kid. That's when it starts,
So busy trying to fit in.
Yeah.
But you don't get out of that. Like, even in my experience in the most nurturing environment, there was kids in 4th, 5th grade, everybody's kind of like, what you
Posturing
wearing,
up.
what you doing,
Yeah.
and it was traumatizing. That was probably one of my biggest social traumas. Going into a Waldorf school in 4th grade in Boulder, Colorado,
But they don't pick on you, they cast a spell on you.
Yeah, no doubt.
It's like total opposite
Right.
from where you guys, I'm sure, grew up,
I mean, I grew up in Louisville, Kentucky. So for me, I went to private schools. I always had a scholarship for playing basketball or being black. That was my deal. So I was there was 3 black kids at my K through 12 or K through 8. 2 girls and me. So I was always kind of an outcast, but it was cool because they were like, oh, look, you're real. Wow. Look at your hair. It's kind of fun. But it was also traumatizing because I was never good enough, and I was always trying to, be kind of fit into the private school life.
Yeah.
And it definitely wasn't nurturing. It was more like, they were pretty rude.
No, that's how it is. Somebody told me, they're like, whatever you who it was? It was Tom Shadyac. You know Tom? Director. He lived in Paradise Cove, and he went through awakening. He got into a bike accident, gave a lot of his money, started doing some wacky things. But I would go over and talk to him, and he was like, number one thing, get your kids out of the schools. And I didn't understand what he was saying, because to me, schools gave me time to do what I needed to do.
Yeah, no doubt. But
Didn't
that's
think
what
about it
is.
the same way. That's the problem right there, what I just said.
100%.
I was looking at the school, like, do as much as you can do, but I looked at it it would give me my time to do what I needed to do.
Yeah.
When ultimately,
It's like babysitting.
right.
Yeah.
It's like a daycare, but till you're an adult.
That's really
which I
probably
think is
the wrong way
horrible.
of looking
My
at it,
oldest
yeah.
daughter was homeschooled, and she's smart as a whip. She's independent. She's confident. You know, she was a thumper. Her mom was a thumper, so she was going to church twice a week, and she was, lives in Alabama, so it's a little different. But she's definitely, the homeschooling had a huge effect on her.
I mean, really, too, is Chaz was homeschooled, and Jade. And we didn't really mean to, but it just kind of, because I think their intellect, it was easier for them to be around older people, and being in that environment, school, and all that, the judging, all that stuff. It made it harder for them to focus on what they had to do, really. And so we did end up pulling them out, which is interesting. Because we didn't think about going into it. I always thought of it as a place, but also the sports part of it was great. We enjoyed the water polo and some of the other things, but I think that, I don't know, it'd be interesting to put other things inside the curriculum that they have now and add some of the things that are offered in some of these other mystery schools, because it probably would help.
Well, as I said when Jim was here, I think 65% of the people jailed in the United States do not have high school diplomas. Wow. And one of the people at the debate the other night was like, we need to start with the education system, because that's the foundation of a lot of it. So you're right, there should be yoga, there should be spiritual classes in our education system to give humans
absolutely
a foundation, a place to kind of understand who you are and what you are and why you are, versus learn this that has nothing to do with coping with real life, right?
Zero.
You spend your whole time reading about shit that's not going to affect you in any way. It's not going to help you help someone. It's just kind of like it needs to be changed.
Yeah.
And change, when you tell them that, it just needs to be worked on. I think of the words because they take it very seriously, especially when you say the word spirituality, they freak out. If you really think about, and this is one of the reasons why I'm here, is when going through an awakening, if you go to a hospital in the West, here in California, anywhere in the United States, they'll most likely they'll say that you have schizophrenia or you're bipolar, say something, but they don't understand what an awakening is. They don't understand energy-based symptoms. It just doesn't. And I think if they did, they most likely would be fired, because they're not trained like that. So how are they to even understand it, right? So to me, looking at it, and I've said this 100 times, I'll probably keep saying it every time, is that, being a spiritual being and having a human experience, they're all spiritual. So I think if we just looked at it from the reverse side, we're always trying to prescribe things and look at somebody from the outside in, which doesn't seem, it's backwards. If you look at from the other side and what the person is looking, because if you put, it's like putting a Band-Aid here, the problem's still behind it. It's always behind it.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, this is there's on the subject of schooling and change, I think, change in education. There's an example here in Los Angeles, in Watts, actually, one of the middle schools there, that a friend of mine he's a 6th grade teacher there.
Oh, wow.
And I've gone in with some of my friends to paint his classroom. We did this last year, and there's more paintings going up, I think, real soon, actually. And I've gone in, I have this project called the Vision Train, which we can talk about later, but we invite the children to draw their visions in a train car. And it's this, exactly what you're saying. It's like, what if we look at it from the other side? That's exactly it. It's like you get an opportunity, you have other people come in, even in the system that you're in, and there's many teachers, amazing teachers out there that are infusing this perspective through the curriculums that they're being told they have
the
to
mandatory
follow,
stuff.
right? And this gave me hope, a lot of hope, going to Watts and spending time with these kids and doing these paintings in there. When we come in, they're looking at us like we're gods, because they're like, "Wow, you guys painted all this," and their classroom looks like the coolest classroom in the whole school. Yeah. But the conversations that we got to get in with the teacher, other teachers, the principals, and they're so stoked. They want us to come back. The more that we can come back and just be with the kids and open their horizons through direct experience.
Oh, absolutely.
It's like this is real. This isn't a storybook.
Yeah.
You do a lot of different things for kids. So ever since I met you, that was one of the first things we spoke about, was the train.
Yeah.
First thing.
Our mutual friend Samuel J. He came and played music with us for it was like 1st grade class.
Right.
some other friends of mine, and it's a still beta project. I feel like it's just something that's still just barely getting going, because someday this train's going to be millions of cars long.
Awesome.
Connecting people's visions, little kids to, grandparents and all the characters in between. And it's time to really like bring out our gifts and share them, and see them, that they're real and they're true, and that each one of us matters. Each one of our voices is so important, and not one of us is going to draw a line in the same way, really.
No.
I mean, just a straight line maybe, but give it a little bit
put
of
a little
time.
flair on it, yeah.
And it's you. There's no one else that can sit in the same seat that you're in right now. There's only you. And if you don't give your gold and give your gift, it's never going to be given.
So true.
And so giving platform for that. I like thinking about how I can give more platform to.
You can tell by the way you speak that you've had a well-rounded, I don't want to say upbringing, but ration of love. Right? Just by the way you speak and the way you articulate what you're saying right now, you can tell by the way you raised it, how you convey what you're saying for real.
Yeah, you feel it. Well, it's energy.
No.
It's energy.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think there's one thing to communicate verbally, but there's also that energy that I'm nowhere near where you are, obviously, but I feel it. We just are used to using it very differently.
Well, it's like a switch that you learn to put on, and when you're also in the environment of other people that are in that state, then it uplifts you as well, and we all have access to it. And that's the thing. It's like finding the things that help us get access, and then realizing and not sabotaging ourselves. I mean, that's the thing that we have to really become aware of, because then you feel like, oh, that feels good. Like, that's really good for me. But then how many times do you then experience all those little demons that come in that are like, It's like,
you're like, hold
2
up,
steps back,
hold up.
1 step forward, but that's the kind of like, that's the dance of
Yeah.
also accepting.
It scares people. Like, we're talking about this, and to me, this is normal now. And before, years ago, I would have been like, what are they talking about? But my son, and all my kids, they if you ask them what is God, or what is consciousness, we didn't know. I didn't raise my kids conscious whatsoever. I was a street hoodlum, and I raised them. That's what it is, survival mode. Which I'm not saying is the best mode. I'm just saying it was my mode. But after going through this awakening and seeing that there's something else out there, it's not just what you see. It's not as it appears, right? And then knowing that I raised my kids my whole life. Like if somebody went up to my kid and gave him some shit, I'm telling my kid, punch him, kick him in his lung. I'm saying, like, seriously, like, I'm telling you, like, my older son's the sweetest kid. And I was like, I probably ruined him because I was thinking, because you need to defend as a man, that's all you're thinking. If a man goes up to your kid, what are you going to say? You're going to say, crack him. That's just,
I told my daughters that. I'm like, if somebody gives you a hard time, punch him in the face.
That's, but going back
Bad
and thinking about,
advice.
not now with I have an
Bad
8-year-old. Oh my, horrible advice. It is the worst advice I've ever heard in my life. It's like ridiculous.
But that's where it's like, if you do learn some martial arts, study some of that as a kid, you learn also your own power and your own kind of like, and then you also learn that you don't use that unless you ever absolutely need to, right?
No, absolutely.
But it's like building the strength of the sanchin, which is your auric field.
Yeah.
Right? So you can basically, that was one of the things that I was taught when I was 15. I got to study with this amazing woman in Boulder, Colorado. It was a self-defense course. But she taught us about sanchin. She's like, just within your energy, you can block people. You can make yourself invisible. Yeah. And anybody that, they can't see you.
Yeah.
And it's true.
I mean,
experimented with it.
I mean, I can tell you this, like, where me and Joey come from, or where we come from together, like our experience together, not where we come from. But part of what I know I did is it was preventative. My ego or my persona was much bigger than I was in that world. So people were like, don't fuck with that dude. He'll bite your ear off, and I was not that guy, but that was the persona, and I ran with it. So when I would walk in the room and my energy was like, oh shit. And I didn't look like Jack. You know, Jack's much scarier than me, but I still had I carried that same energy to not have to use violence, because I would project that don't fuck with me or I'm gonna.
Well, be on the street. It's like if you don't have it, then people will fuck with you, as they say, and then you're a target to keep on happening. So the way I grew up is I knew that, you know, like if you do something every, say, 4 to 5 months, it really freak people out. Yeah. You know, it's like really freak people out. They tend to stay away. You hear what he did? And I was good at doing that. I get it. Because you would just have to do, like, you know, and it couldn't just be something very normal. It had to be something very creative and violent, but creative. But people would remember.
Well, it's kind of like that, like one of those stories, and we'll get back to her journey, right? Mm-hmm. But one time me and Joey go out with some of our friends to Black and Blue, this nightclub in Hollywood. And we were with one of Joey's friends. I'm not going to mention any names, but he's kind of a badass, knew some martial arts, right? And something had happened with one of our other friends, and one of the bouncers had a beef over a girl. And I hadn't been around those guys ever. And I knew who they were and what they were about, but I hadn't really seen it. But this one guy that we were with had 4 security guards walking us out. And they were literally so afraid of him, Amanda, that he went like this. And they like ran 4 steps back.
One of them, like 6'7" Roman was the 6'7" big dude.
I mean, and that was one of those do it every once in a while, because we wrote off that story forever, because people would see me, they'd be like, oh, you were out the other night, tell us what happened. And I'm like, he just went like this, and they like ran down the sidewalk. And I'm talking about like really big men, and the dude is smaller than both of us that did it. And I was
he was the one, okay, so it's funny because I didn't tell you, so he was the one who always told me, you only have to do this about once every 4 months, but you got to be very creative. You'll have to fight much less. You don't have to do, you know, you don't have to protect your money. Like he had, this was his
MO.
This is his MO, you know, survival. And he knew it was mental. It was a mental warfare game on the street, you know? So a lot of times you're doing it, you don't want to fight. Like I didn't want, but you do these things to counteract so that you don't have to. And then when you have to, you just have to
spin it.
Yeah.
But that's happening. That's happening around us all the time. People are.
I think it is, in coming from that world and raising kids and now being a conscious man and looking back at how I got here in Bridge. I'm very proud of it now. I'm not saying that I'm proud of what I did. I'm proud of who I am, meaning that I understand that without that and all those lessons, that I wouldn't be able to be here and learn and talk about those things. And God doesn't make mistakes. So those things happen for a reason. And people are so used to looking at things. I want a perfect life, right? I want everything perfect. Well, everything is perfect. How would you ever know if everything got any better? You wouldn't. You only know good because there's bad. And it's true, but everybody thinks it's always got to be great all the time. It's like, no, if you have practices and things that help you, if it's sports, whatever it is, ballet, art, these things help you get through the day-to-day bustle and hustle that make you get through the trials and tribulations of the world. So I think that, that's what I think.
Yeah, no doubt.
Nailed it.
So tell us about, like, after school, like what made you kind of dive into art? Like, when did you know? What was that moment in your life where you were like, I can create something that will affect people the way that it does?
Good question. It was an evolution, of course, as it is. I think I had a prayer when I was pretty young that I wanted to do something that mattered in the world, that I realized that was the best thing I could probably do, is in some way be of service. And I wasn't sure how that was going to happen. I was interested in art. I had a great art teacher the last 2 years in high school, who was very supportive in helping me refine technique and introduced me to new mediums. I think my first acrylic painting I did with him. I hadn't even touched oils yet, though, in school. But I was also introduced to the Renaissance, I think in 7th grade, where that was the first time it really opened my eyes. I was like, wow. Yeah. It moved me. You know, there was something magical about it that I could sense that there was something there. And I had a real knack for it. I loved it. But I didn't see it as, I didn't think that a career or something, I wasn't really even thinking of career. But I had an opportunity after high school. I mean, I was looking at art schools. My parents were very open. They're like, all right, let's go visit some of these schools.
Right.
We went to New York, the Pratt Institute, Chicago, the Chicago Art Institute, checking out these schools and stuff. But when I found out how much they were and everything, I was like, that's kind of, that's wacky, you know? I don't know. There was a part of me that was a little uncertain about feeling like going into debt like that was going to be a smart move. And so I had another opportunity, and it was there was a man, Sam Bull, who came to our school. I think it was like 11th, 12th grade. And he came to present this project called the Center for Interim Studies, which doesn't exist anymore, but he's gone on to create this organization, Leap Now, which is a gap year program for kids in between schools. But this was a project that was for anybody, like in a gap year in their life, where they wanted to do something else, learn something else. And so I got to go into his office, and he had this big map that said that of the world, and he said, if you could go anywhere in the world, do anything. These were 3 questions. Where in the world interests you? What interests you? And can you pay to be a part of a program? Would you like to pay to be a part of a program or be a volunteer? And so within that 2-hour interview, we had such a great download and talk. And he immediately had these 2 people that just popped up. He was like, they're the ones for me. And those 2 people ended up paving the way to where I am now. And one was Robin Lim. She was a midwife in Bali, Indonesia. She won CNN Hero of the Year, I think in 2011.
Wow.
She's a really incredible person, has built and helped integrate natural birthing back into Bali.
How old were you when you first went to Bali?
I was 18.
Yeah, right after high school.
Right after high school.
In the gap year.
Yeah, my
Okay,
God.
I'm listening.
Okay, I'm sorry.
And I got to illustrate an herbal book based on traditional plants and roots used in childbirth in Bali. So it was a part of re-educating also the indigenous, that they didn't have to rely on Western medicine.
Yeah.
So there was this really beautiful kind of like community that I was brought into there that was I was living with the Balinese families and living with these kind of like renegade visionaries that were actually doing something illegal at the time. It's now a totally legal project called Bumi Sehat right outside of Ubud in Bali.
Oh yeah, I was there. What is that?
It's a birthing clinic.
But what was illegal about it, you said?
Well, it wasn't a sanctioned government.
Oh,
thing in
Natural
Indonesia.
birth, right?
Yeah.
That's why?
You had to go to the hospital.
And and then the other connection was this man, Michael Fuchs, in Vienna, Austria. And he's the son of this artist, Ernst Fuchs.
Yeah.
And Ernst
Looked him up.
Fuchs is a real legendary character that is not incredibly well known still yet, as he was a bit of a renegade of his time. He was a mystic. And right out of Second World War is when him and some of his friends in Vienna, Austria, founded the School of Fantastic Realism. And coincidentally, like this is seriously coincidental, I think, is my high school art teacher is a Japanese fantastic realist, Hikaru Hirata, and he was a follower. His great like mentor was Ernst Fuchs, but he never got to meet him. But he showed us slides of his work in school when I was like writing notes to my friends, I was probably paying attention. But I come back and I tell him I got this opportunity through this man Sam Bull to go study with his son, and I told him I was like, I got this invitation to go be an apprentice in the style of the old masters with this artist in Vienna, Austria, and his name's Michael Fuchs. And he like fell against the wall.
Yeah,
he
was like, wow. But that's great. Your teacher.
But did you always feel like kind of like you always been in the flow? It's like, sounds like that's.
Something has been open.
Right?
Yeah.
And I've been thankfully, I think, smart enough or wise enough to follow the right flow, and not get too stuck. I've had quite a few challenges along the way of temptations to get stuck.
Right.
But there's been a gift. There's been some kind of common theme along the way that has guided me. Yeah. I do feel very guided when I look back at my life. Though along the way, it's kind of like, oh, I don't know. Maybe that sounds like a good idea. Let's go over there. But I almost stayed in Bali. Actually, there was a period that I really fell in love with the place, and there's something very connected. I haven't been back now in like 11 or 12 years.
How long were you there?
I was there on and off for a good year and a half, kind of, and then I kept going back. My father was a pilot for United Airlines.
Yeah.
And so I had this wonderful opportunity to fly
Friends and family.
standby
Yeah.
all over the world. And so that really enabled me to then live in Vienna, Austria, go back to Bali, and then come to the U.S. And I started doing that when I was about 19. And so I haven't stopped. So,
Tell us about the Apocalypse Chapel.
Yeah.
I mean, as we looked it up and kind of looked, it seems pretty amazing.
Very amazing, yeah.
How was that?
that was an intense experience, very intense experience. So the Apocalypse Chapel is a side chapel built into an old Gothic church in the southern capital of Carinthia, which is Klagenfurt in Austria. There's 9 states of Austria, and the southern state is Carinthia. And Klagenfurt is the capital, and it is a pretty conservative region, actually. But the priest there was a pretty interesting character, and he was really he really liked Ernst Fuchs's work and understood his work, and asked him originally to if he would maybe paint just a wall. And then it came back
It
that
evolved.
and then it came back and it was like, well, it's going to cost this much. And he was like, oh, well, we don't have that kind of money. But it got into Ernst's head, and he then came back and he was like, all right, I want to paint the apocalypse. I'll do it for free, and I want that whole side chapel.
Yeah.
And it took him 20 years.
Wow.
And you were there
Actually.
for 5, right?
Yep.
Off and on for 5.
We were looking at, that was amazing. Absolutely amazing.
And so I painted, and I was in my early 20s when I was working in there, and I got to say, a lot of the time, I did not like it at all.
Yeah.
It was a really challenging space to be in.
not claustrophobic. How big? Like, I mean,
It's not huge. Yeah, it's not a huge space, and it was like always in summer that we were there, and it was gorgeous out. You know,
okay.
And you're indoors.
And
Okay.
then there was like this real conservative, and I got to see through the kind of like beneath the skin of kind of the organization around the church, because we lived in the church house, you know, with the priests
So
and
you were
everything.
on site constantly.
Oh, it was strippy stuff.
Yeah.
it had to be.
But you know
Yeah,
what?
there it is.
There's a picture of it.
And
Yeah.
I painted a bunch of stuff in here. I
look at
painted
that.
all the drapery that is
phone. That is ridiculous.
all the drapery on the ceiling that is separating all the images into heaven.
What's the floors made of?
It's marble.
Yeah, it looks amazing. But I mean, even though it wasn't that pleasant, that's part of your journey that, you know, you can always look back on and go, that's what I don't want to do again. Right?
Yes, of course, that always gives you. But there were aspects of that I knew at the time too. Like, these are experiences that I'm having that are incredibly unique, and valuable and rare. And I actually just got to go back here for the first time in like 10 years. This spring, I took my class, 19 students from all over the world. Some of the assistants of Fuchs and I started a school 6 years ago in Vienna called the Vienna School of Visionary Art.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so my 5-week course just recently was on the apocalypse.
Nice.
And so I wrap, you know, the unveiling, the lifting of the veil is actually what apocalypse means. It does not mean the end of times. It means the lifting of the veil.
Wow.
And so we went into, so what does that mean? And what, as an artist, as a conscious creator, right? What can you put out there to help facilitate the lifting of the veil?
Wow.
You know?
That's amazing. That's big.
It's
I
big.
mean, we need a lifting of the veil now.
It's happening.
It is. But I mean, like, literally, like, can we just lift the veil now and just like change things? Because I didn't know that's what that meant. That's big.
I didn't either when I was painting.
Well, you know what that is? That's the polarity, because people, that's the light of it and then the dark of it. Because apocalypse, what do you think?
Think of the end.
end
It's
of
all
time.
over.
Right.
That's what I think.
I mean, that's what
But that's what you
Hollywood
think
said.
of.
Guess
But,
what?
but the counterpart of that
Because
is
it is the end of time for that train of thought,
Right.
for that older way to do things, for those older people that are stuck.
Yes.
Which I'm going to keep that word close to me because I don't want to be stuck.
Yeah.
It is the end of time for them, but it's not the end of the time for us.
Right.
And I mean us as in humans.
Humanity.
Not me and you. But
right.
like,
I know.
And it's nice to think, too, in a nonlinear fashion about this as well, that the apocalypse, that we're all in a different stage of the apocalypse.
Yeah.
Some of us are already living in the post-apocalyptic world, rebuilding the world. Some of us are living in the apocalypse, in an apocalypse
and it's crumbling
now.
around. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Some fear it coming, don't know what it is, right? and some have no clue it's
even happening. Yeah,
and that's all happening right now.
Right.
You know what? You're absolutely right, and that's. I think we touched on that with Jim the other day. It's like it's realms, it's dimensions. It's like people see things completely different.
Yeah.
And there's different people living in different realms that live in the same house.
Yeah. In this room.
That are
in
related.
this room.
Completely.
No, think about it. In this room.
Right. And
it's
that's
like Joey's a mentor to me and always has been. When we were out there doing what we did, I was, Joey was teaching me. He taught me how to not to be a man. I don't want to be corny, and that's probably not corny, but he kind of taught me how to move. Like I followed Joey's movements, and I was like, okay, that's cool. And here I am again, and we're on different levels of this game right now, and I'm looking to you for that guidance. So we're definitely all on the same road, but at different speeds.
Yeah.
Per se.
It's real. And that's
weave.
Yeah.
Yeah,
we
bobbing
weave.
and weaving, bobbing and weaving.
It's
The soul families.
And it's funny, I think that you don't really know you're being guided. Depending, but you don't know you're being guided until you look back and you go, I think I was being guided. Because when you're in it, it's hard to see it, right? It's so hard to like see what is actually happening because you're in it. But when you're able to like kind of look back at it, it's like taking the shirt off. You can look and kind of look and go, wow, and see how you were being guided. Because we're all being guided. I say the same thing all the time. We're antennas and we pick up on information. And just because we live in different realms that we don't connect to it. A lot of people just aren't connected. And that's the thing I think that for this platform is trying to have a place to listen to and connect to other people that connect like that. Because I love talking about it, but I can't talk about it with everybody because when I do, now I know when to and when not to, because if I started talking about this before a couple of years ago, it just doesn't sound like, table talk. People just look at me and you sound crazy.
Yeah.
Doesn't sound like
changing though.
It's changing now because I know where to say it and who to say it to. Who my squad is.
But if you could have seen like the Joey and the Joey I knew and he knew, and now completely different. Like much kinder, much more. I want to say much more real. And that's a funny word to use, but it's like he's his true self now. And
beautiful.
And you can hear it and you can feel it in the things that he's doing and the things that he says.
So and so when somebody looks at me, because I know who I am and who I was, but it's how I got here. But to look at that and know the things that I did, and I did some, everyone does. When you're out, there's things that no one wants to ever talk about, but you do them. So when I went through that and going through that awakening process, and to look at it, and it really was there was amazing things that were happening, and there were things that weren't so amazing about the process, and that is being separated from my family because they didn't understand what was happening, and for me not to have a place that understood what was happening. I had nowhere to go to say, the other thing I said I was hearing voices, which was, don't ever say that. Say you're feeling them. Don't, because when I said that, they're like, what do you mean you're hearing? What are they telling you to do?
Shoot up a Walmart?
Like right out and so then you start to go, wait, this does sound a little crazy. So you start to stop and there's no place to go to actually, to think about this. The most amazing thing that can happen to somebody, and there's nowhere to go to really help yourself besides, for me it was Kundalini yoga, and I'll keep saying it, but a conscious community and community, just the right community to understand what you're going through and care about an individual from the other side, not from, the outside, judging them, passing, all the other things that you do that make people not want to say it. Instead they go, you know what? Maybe I'll just kill myself. I don't want to tell somebody I'm hearing things. It's a lot that's why people do the shit they're doing. Why would you don't want to, because you're going to be judged, you're going to be pointed. So it is difficult. So for me, putting my head down and just diving into it was kind of what I did with everything. But it was difficult because my kids, my sons, the way I taught them, the way I was, the polarity was I wanted to help people. I wanted to be of service. And they would look at me like, they're good people, but that wasn't what I was spitting before.
Yeah, no doubt.
At all. But I got to see how amazing it felt because it did feel good. It felt great. Now I was saying some weird shit, but I really wanted to understand and go, wow, this is out there and it lives in everybody. Like we're always looking for this person, this president, this somebody, guru to lead us to the promised land when it's inside us. Like,
Yeah.
it's not like someone else doesn't have it. And I think that's what I got to understand, that I got to reach inside and go, oh, wait a minute, it's me. And so when I like said that the other time, said, he's like, when I started to love me, I started to love everything. And I was able to understand it a lot differently because I wasn't projecting all my shit on everyone else and blaming them for all my idiosyncrasies. Because that's pretty much what I did to get at everything, was manipulate my way out of it. And I was great. I was a closer. I was a spin doctor. I could get it every time. And if I didn't, I would just keep working on it until you gave it to me.
Yeah.
And it just, you know, and it did. It was like having, you know, these crosshairs your whole life, and then all of a sudden no one tells you, and they just switch. And you're like, wait a minute, I thought I was pointed that way. Like, no, we just redirected you. We just were redirected. And then that's the part of, I feel, programming or conditioning, whatever you want to call it, that we have, that you have to start kind of going back in to re-understand what's really going on, because society teaches us pretty much all the wrong way.